Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first virtual event for 2021. This is the BMF's Leading from the Front series with our esteemed guest, Zamo Masito, who we're very excited about. We thought it would be exciting to start off the year talking about the fourth industrial revolution, which I think most people are thinking about or thinking what it means for their future. So I'm very excited to be able to engage Mr. Masito on this topic. Before we go there though, I want to just hand over to Mpho Musiki, who is the Gauteng chairperson, for the official welcome.
Thank you, Mandisa. Good evening, BMF members, friends of the BMF, and esteemed guests. It's still January, so I suppose it's okay for me to say compliments of the new year. We're really hoping that 2021 is a better year than 2020. So this year we're continuing with our series, Leading from the Front. And we're really excited that we continue to be able to secure speakers of note. I'm sure when Mandisa officially introduces our speaker today, you'll also agree with me. We really look to these speakers to come and share their experiences and really also just give us pearls. So I'm certainly excited to hear from a leader who is in one of the leading innovating companies. So you would know that from a BMF, our pillars are managerial leadership development and socio-economic transformation. And we use thought leadership to really stir and achieve these two objectives. So we are excited. I mean, I can't express how excited I am. Certainly, especially seeing that there's when we think of the fourth industrial revolution, really from an Africa's perspective, we always look and think about all the work that we need to do to be able to leverage in terms of just the infrastructure build and just also the gap. We know that most of Africa is rural, and for us to properly leverage the fourth industrial revolution, we would need to do serious investments into infrastructure that would enable us to exploit this opportunity. So we look forward to hearing from our speaker how we can do that. But most of all, I think it's also on a personal level in terms of just how we can also position ourselves to make sure that we're able to leverage. So I'm really excited. I'm not going to go into much more detail because I think my excitement would overflow and I'll end up doing the speech myself. But I want to add my welcome to the speaker and hand back to Mandisa to do the intros for our speaker.
Oops, I'm on mute. I guess that's still the 2021 word. So as I've said earlier, we have Mr. Zamo Masito as our esteemed guest tonight. I obviously have done my research going into this event, but for the benefit of the people that may have not, Mr. Masito, could you please just give us a very quick intro as to who Zamo Masito is and what your role at Google is, because I think that's also quite exciting for people to know.
Oh, super. Welcome, everyone, and good day and good evening. My name is Zamo, which basically means to try, or my mother, it's life is Zamo. So life is effort. So if you don't try, there's no life. So, and I was born in Guguletu, Cape Town. So I'm not from Cape Town, Table Mountain, Camps Bay. I was born in the shadows of Cape Town. And then I grew up in Guguletu, and then I moved to a village in the Eastern Cape. I grew up in the villages. I love village people more than township or suburban people. I find them wiser and smarter than suburban and township people. And I love village life. And I'm in love with cows. The same way white people, I love cats and dogs. I'm there. I also love cows. Like I'll take leave if one of my cows will die or something like that. I'll do what white people do. I'll go and leave and I'll need therapy. So I really love cows a lot. And then I came back from the Eastern Cape and I grew up in Khayelitsha. So when Khayelitsha started around about 1985, 86, I was we were one of the first few families to live in Khayelitsha, in those RDP houses built by the National Party, not the ANC. And they're still standing, which says a lot about competency and excellence, even though there was apartheid. So that's the part. So then I grew up there, and then I went to school there, Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, finished under Bantu education. Then I got a scholarship to go to the US. And then I came back. I hated the US. I came back, but I learned a lot from the US. Then I went to UCT, and then I majored in statistics and economics. And then I did my undergrad, postgrad statistics, economics. And then I did a postgrad in marketing. And then I decided I'm be a teacher. So I started teaching while I was at UCT. Then I did night school for Black kids who were failing. So my whole intention was to increase the pass rate of Black kids who come from the same places as me. And I knew that the issue is not intelligence and the issue is not English, because English is not a measure of intelligence. Just because you're not fluent in it doesn't mean you're not smart. There are many things that were invented in the world without people speaking English. So this thing of attaching fluency to English and intelligence is just nonsense. So I knew that there was nothing to do with English and it had nothing to do with IQ. So then I started that program at school at UCT where we were teaching people cultural relevant context and content so that you attach something to your culture. Then you will understand it better rather than learn about game theory or probability theory in a casino. How many Black people do you know who grew up in a village or township who've been inside a casino and they've played blackjack? But the whole thing is taught in a casino, so then we will change the curriculum and fit it into our daily lives. Then I did that. I finished at UCT. I continued teaching, which is my first love. Then I got a job at Unilever. I was at Unilever for 10 years. I started as a statistician and an analyst. And then I grew up and got promoted. And then I was head of Africa Research and Insights and data analytics and people analytics and behavioral science. And then I moved into marketing. Then I again took a step down and then I became a brand manager, senior brand manager, marketing director, VP. Then I sat in the board of Unilever, looking after the foods business as the VP of foods. Then I decided I want to do media. I went into media. I headed up media for Unilever. So you can see I move around depending on what interests me. So then I finished Unilever. I went to join Nike. When we won the World Cup 2010 bid, I wanted to be part of the 2010 World Cup bid. So fortunately, as the universe will do it, when you do tell the universe what you want, I got a gig at Nike and I was the CMO for Nike Africa and Nike World Cup. And I did that. We did it very well. Then I left Nike. I ran my own consultancy for 3-4 years. And I went back to teach at UCT full time. And I was teaching, trying to complete my PhD. And then I decided to join tech companies because at that time I hadn't joined a tech company and I thought mobile phone is the way. So let me go learn about mobile phones and technology and network deployment, data, pricing, all of that. Then I joined Vodacom and I was the CMO of Vodacom. Then I moved to Vodafone in London. I was in London for some time and I spent time in London and then I was global lead there for the brand. Then I came back to Africa again to be CMO for Africa. Then I joined Google. And now I'm the CMO of Google for Africa. And really, again, all I want to do is use the power of technology as a tool for social change at a profit. So it's not an NGO, or else I would have gone and joined an NGO. So I've joined a business because I feel that it's probably the most efficient way to get there faster in partnership with government, in partnership with NGOs. So it will always be in partnership with someone, but I chose a private sector route, but I still want to do good at a profit. So that's, and I have 3 daughters. My firstborn is now going to UCT and following me, I think. And then the second one is at school doing a high school, grade 11. And then I've got a 4-year-old.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I just wanted to say to our attendees that I will ask Mr. Masito a couple of questions, and then after some time, I will give you guys the opportunity to send through your questions, so you can type them on the chat box, and then I'll pick them up as we go along. Thank you for that, Zamo. So what an interesting journey. And I think, you know, going into my first question, the one thing that came to my mind is brave, to be able to kind of like look at, have a vision, right, for your life, because some of us grow up and we think, okay, I want to be a doctor, and that's just where you go and that's where you land up. But you were able to say, oh, okay, I want to be this guy, but actually I'm also interested in this, and you went for it, and it's quite exciting. So, which leads me to my first question, right? So when I was researching this topic, I listened to a lot of podcasts. I read up a lot of articles because I wanted to make sure that I really understand what it is that I'm going to be asking you today. And one of the things that struck me in one of the podcasts that I listened to was I came across, again, it was about, you know, the 4th Industrial Revolution, and how when back in the day, in the turn of the century, when the town planners for New York were planning the roads leading to the beaches, they purposefully ensured that the roads were not suitable for buses, because that would ensure that poor people who are coming from poor communities who are reliant on public transports and buses at the time wouldn't have access to those beaches. So it was a deliberate move to kind of reserve the beaches for those people. So basically the infrastructure shaped the social fabric of that community. Now, what I find interesting is that with technology, you don't need that infrastructure to start anything and continue anything. You basically don't need permission, right? So why is it then that humans are so afraid of technology and technological advancements that have shown greater benefits than not innovating? So what in your view do you think, you know, scares people about technology?
I'm not sure it's fear per se. I don't think it's genesis or origin is fear. I think its genesis is that if you look at the Edelman report on trust, trust is declining. And trust is the most important currency in relationships, in transactions. Actually, at the core is trust. We are now low trust on media. We are low trust on government. We are low trust even on priests or churches, something that is weird. Like, I think that the challenge we're having is that the trust is low. So people don't always know who to trust. They don't know who now is a reliable source to go to. They don't know always. Like if you look at vaccines, people are not that they don't want to. I mean, we've been injected with vaccines, especially if you're Black. You have shitloads of vaccines in your body already. And if you're still standing, what will this one do to you when you've already been pumped with so many? But because we don't know anymore who to trust, we don't know who's reliable data, who's reliable authority. Trust is what's actually, for me, is my concern in society, is that there is a decline in trust, which then makes it harder for people to believe that things like even technology that attempts to democratize opportunity should be trusted. Because then it gets looked at with the lens of lack of trust and then fear. So I think the thing that we are needing to work harder on as a society as a whole is trust. is to be able to, the countries that have moved on and used and leveraged technologies because they trusted that it's good utility. It will do good. And that's what they trusted. So they let their kids play with computers at a young age. They let their kids code at a young age. But that was trust. If the parents didn't trust, they wouldn't have done it. We send our kids to school because we trust that they will have good education. And therefore they will become, we see education as a good utility. And I think we should apply the same thing with technology, in that technology needs to be seen as great utility, and it should be seen as something that will be able to democratize social opportunities at larger scale than if you were offline. And if you're online, you can democratize talent. You can democratize being seen. You can democratize being heard. You can democratize voices. You can democratize things like equality, where currently we have gender inequality or income inequality, wealth inequality. So I think the more I think about it, the more I still think that we have a lot of work to do on trust. And it's not like Africans are dumb. And it's not like Africans are not smart. People can see things that will help them with their hustle. It's just they need to skip the trust up or low trust levels around these things, especially there's lots of conspiracy theories around, no, they want to steal your IP, your data. They want to do this. They do this with your, they tracking you. They doing this, this thing is toxic. So everyone tends to hear the bad news more than we hear good news. And we tend to remember the bad news more than we remember the good news because we're wired for survival. So we hear more bad news than we hear good news. And I don't think we've had enough good news about technology, as I have had, to trust that technology can be a tool for social change.
So based on that answer, right, around trust, and I do believe you, because last week I got a message from my aunt, one of these random ones, those chain messages saying delete WhatsApp, it's not safe, they wanting your data. And I had to be like, Mamkulu, no one cares about your stokvel arrangements. They're not stealing your data, right? But do you feel that, you know, companies in the tech space are doing enough to earn that trust? So when you think about, without naming names, the big news story that was happening over the last couple of weeks around moving from one platform to another because of this reason and that reason, do you feel that there's enough, you know, assurance coming that actually we're doing this for this reason and it's not going to affect whatever it is that you think that we're doing? When I think about like the terms and conditions of just buying a new phone, I want to get to the phone. I don't want to get to the T's and C's. When I'm downloading an app, I want to be able to use the app. Why aren't there 10 sentences, very simple, that explain to me what it is that needs to happen, so that I can sign up quickly and just go? So yeah, is the industry doing enough to ensure that people trust the innovations and changes that are happening at a very, very rapid rate?
Let's start with that. Let's first acknowledge that the tech industry of Silicon Valley is only 20 years. It's still a teenager. So let's start there, because if you look at the motor industry, it's old. Banking is old, but there was the alcohol industry is old. But there was a time when alcohol had its own pathologies or toxicity elements, which it still does at some point, but a lot of those things now are under management, under supervision. There's lots of responsible drinking advertising. There's a lot more things that the industry has put in place. Same, cars. There was a time when driving a car was not safe. Didn't have seatbelts, and for a while actually, and didn't have ABS brakes, didn't have, and now if you are younger, you assume that a car has always been like that. But you forget that industries evolve. and industries evolve for good, because no industry deliberately, intentionally wants to self-destruct. Especially if you are good on shareholder value, you are a utility, you are useful and helpful to people. So the way I've seen it is, for example, being at Google now, is that if you go and search now, we talk about privacy, safety, and security. And we give you back the power to be able to dictate your safety. You can go and click on a feature now called Safe Search. You can also determine when you want your data deleted, how long you want your data to stay. And if you've got kids, for example, you have programs like Family Link. And Family Link is, if you're a parent, it helps you monitor your child's digital footprint. It helps you make sure that your child doesn't go to certain sites that you don't want them to go. And it also helps you track your child, geolocate them, know where they are. Then you have also programs like YouTube Kids. YouTube Kids is specifically designed for kids and not YouTube for adults or everyone. So I think that what the tech industry is doing, because it's young, it has to learn. And it has to learn sometimes by making mistakes. And so what it is doing then is, as soon as you find out that, oh, our intentions were noble and this is the good, but also it produces this unintended negative. Now, how do we close that? How do we improve that? And also you're constantly listening to parents, you're listening to youth, you're listening to activists, you're listening to government, you're listening to NGOs, and you're trying to work out how do you have this great tech tool to be a tool for good, not for evil. But how do you minimize the evil? Because the truth of the matter is, I haven't seen anything or any industry that does not have a shadow. Any industry that has a light also has a shadow. And the job of leadership is to lead with values and not allow the shadow to take over, and ensure that we are transparently communicating with the public or governments or legislators on how are we managing the shadows that come with a good tool. I mean, like anything, even good food has shadow. There's obesity, there's diabetes. Nothing does not have a shadow if used wrongly. And our job now is to make sure that we don't over-index on just chasing profit, but we also find the balance between shareholder value, positive shareholder value, and sustainable value in business while becoming responsible citizen and correct the stuff. And you're right, if you say to me, I'm worried about this, then I should come back to you and say, you're worried about your child being online? Here are the solutions we put in place. The other lesson I'm learning constantly now is that as the tech industry, we haven't done a great job in educating people about their tools and the features that exist for them to improve privacy, safety, and security. There's a lot of features online now that you can use to improve privacy, safety, and security, but we have still a job to do to increase awareness, do more educational campaigns so that we empower the citizens to know that there are things that they can do, they can be in control.
Again, unmute. So just moving on from that, and going more into the, the topic that I'd lined up, is one of the things that keep coming up in conversations, and I think I can see it for myself as well, is that, for varying factors, Africa as a continent, we've barely kind of, caught up to the third industrial revolution. In your view, do you think that we can be a player? Are we a player? Whether, it's at 10% or what have you, or do you think that once again, we're gonna be lagging behind and taking, it's gonna take us another 5, 10, 20 years to get to a place where, I don't know, the US is? I mean, I know that markets such as as Kenya are much more advanced than what South Africa is, but do you think that there are at least certain countries in the continent that will be leading and the others follow, or do you think that, well, it's gonna take some time?
I'll answer it this way. We should first, when as Africans, we believe the narrative that is fed to us by people who don't even live in this continent. So we first believe the narrative. For example, a simple narrative is Africa is overpopulated. I know that narrative is flawed because Africa as a continent, you can put in China, USA, and all of Europe inside the continent, and we only have 1.2 billion people. So how are we overpopulated? But bulk of Africans believe this narrative that whatever we get told about Africa is poor. How can we be poor when we have all the mineral resources more than anyone else in the world? Mm. The issue here is that we should first, as Africans, address how we tell or talk about Africa. And we should address how we talk about us as Black people, because we are partly to blame as well in that how we narrate the Africa story and how we narrate the Black story is very negative. Even for us, we believe it. But that's the first part. For example, South Africa actually has a lot of startups, tech startups. If you go to Cape Town, you go to Joburg, and you go to Stellenbosch, there's a lot of tech startups. Amazon offices has thousands of people who are based in Cape Town. And one of the software they use, or some of their tech tools they use, were bought from South Africans. And my people don't know those stories. They don't know the tech companies that have been sold for $1 billion that originated from here. So we should be careful to believe the whole story. I'm not saying the story is in glitter and shiny, but I'm just saying there are pockets of hope that exist already. For example, South Africa has one of the highest 4G coverages. It matches with some of the rest in the world. 4G coverage, they've even now piloted 5G. There are countries in Europe and in the West that have not yet piloted 5G. And South Africa has done that. Kenya has just done that, piloted 5G. Or even, you see, so I'm just saying, while we look at the lens of we are behind, whether it be 3IR or 4IR, we should not lose sight of the good stories, because those are the stories we need to promote optimism so that people don't lose hope, people increase trust. Then they can engage even more in 4IR or even 3IR for that matter. Now, if I go to the answer that says, is it possible for us to catch up? Yes, it's possible. What stands in the way? That then becomes the question we should all be asking and answering. For me, I'll give you my honest answers on what I believe stands in the way. The first one is poor leadership. That's what stands in the way. Whether it be poor political leadership and sometimes poor corporate leadership, it's just poor leadership. The second part within that poor leadership is competence and meritocracy. I don't believe we have enough sometimes people who understand where tech is going, who deeply understand technology. So these two, competency and just leadership, visionary leadership, that also embraces competency as the first thing, not comradeship, but competency as the first thing. That's the first part for me. Then the second one, everyone likes to talk about 4IR, but no one wants to talk about what is the foundation that is required for us to be ready to be players in 4IR. And the foundations are simple. The first one is education. The challenge we have is that our education system doesn't produce STEM students, Black students. It doesn't produce enough women STEM graduates. It doesn't. And our education system is poor on maths. Our education system, maths, You need maths. And our education system is poor in introducing technology in primary school. And now that's education. That's not fancy 4IR. That's the foundation of 4IR. The reason India or China churns out hundreds of thousands of engineers in a year, it starts with education. They learn coding early. At primary school, a child has a device. A child is learning to code, or child is learning about computer science early. And we know that in childhood development, if you miss the child development up to age 13, even 7, you are late. We know this even in sport, that if a child is gifted, you better grab them while they're still 7 or 8 or 9. In South Africa, sports players, talented ones, we discover them at age 22. That's late. You are actually late by then. So it's the same thing here, is that education, government, in partnership with corporate, in partnership with NGOs, we need to fix the education system. We can't have kids who come out of school who can't read to understand. Just literacy, read to understand. I'm not even talking about English, because you can code and learn coding in any mother tongue or language. You don't need to be fluent in English. But also, every school doesn't really have proper network facilities, doesn't have fast, high-speed network, doesn't have Wi-Fi or even ADSL. Schools, every child doesn't have a device. Teachers are not well trained on virtual or technology. So that's where it starts for me. That's the first foundation pillar to get to 4IR. The second foundation pillar is data. In a country that has high data costs, you're not gonna get there faster. Fortunately, we're lucky. The good news we had last year, the telcos have agreed with government to reduce the price of data by 30%. We still want that price of data to continue going down, because when you measure the price of data as percentage of a person's income, it's still too high. There was a time when our data was $10 per 1 GB. Probably now it's sitting at $6, $7, 1 GB. It's still high for our minimum wage, for people who earn so little, for people who earn social grants. It's still, so we still need to have a lot of work to do on making data accessible and affordable. The third thing is devices, smart devices. A lot of people forget that in Africa, you have 800 million Africans that are still offline. And you only have 300 million Africans that are online. And the 300 million Africans that are online, the majority of them use what we call basic entry phones. Where I come from, they call it utilili, like it's just your Nokia 22, whatever, you just make calls. And if lucky, a text message, but it's not a smart device. It's not even 4G enabled. Some of them are not even 3G enabled. They are just 2G enabled. So we still have a long way to get to affordable smart devices that don't have memory problem, storage problem, resolution problem, battery life problem. Now, these are the issues that devices currently have issues with Africans, is that you have a device, but now you have storage problems, you have battery life problems, you have resolution problems, you have speed problems. So this is something that we still need to fix. How do we get affordable smart devices in every hand, in every African? That's the area that we need to also focus on. The other area now, you see, I've kind of said you have education, you have data, you have the device. Yeah. These three you need. And then the fourth one is kind of then you need to be able to have the right institutions that promote and embrace technology and where technology is going. And I've already said education is at the heart of this. Without education, we can't move forward. Because if you look at China, India, the ones that seem to have dominated, Japan, they started early. And it's a 15-year investment or 20-year investment upfront to get the results we want. But we can't want results without having tilted the field, without having removed the weed, without having put more manure, fertilized the soil. And all of a sudden now we want Internet of Things. We want shiny things, but we didn't do the work. And so at the core for me is that we're still missing fundamental pillars: leadership, education, data, smart devices. And I don't say cell phone, I said a smart device, whether it comes in a phablet or tablet or laptop or desktop or TV screen, but smart devices. If we get some of these basics in place, the entrepreneurs, the cream will rise to the top. If you look at Silicon Valley is a classical example of the cream rising to the top. All the governments were doing was getting the foundation right. Because you can't, government's job is not to all of a sudden be innovative entrepreneurship. No, government's job is to create an environment that allows talent to flourish. And then the last bit for me is political stability. You can't have thriving entrepreneurship sometimes when people are not feeling there's order, there's stability. That because people do well when there's order. People can forecast and plan the future because of the order and the peace you've given them in the present. If there's no political order, it's chaotic, it's very hard for people to think further than a year. And 4IR needs people who can think beyond 1 year. And that also comes with people feeling safe, people feeling stable, people feeling like we can trust the government, we can trust each other. You're not going to get hijacked. You're not going to get all of that. Women are not going to get raped. Gender-based violence is going to go down. That in itself promotes even 4IR. We don't talk about that because we don't think there's a link between feeling safe and designing for the future.
That's an interesting point. Your point around the right institutions reminded me of a quote I must have read on LinkedIn, where someone said that had Elon Musk stayed in South Africa, there wouldn't be a Tesla, because the environment doesn't allow for that kind of thinking. Because you know, if you go to specific institutions and you say, I've got an innovation that will make us less reliant on, let's say, coal, right? For lack of a better example. And this feeds into your statement about political stability, because someone is thinking about a role that they're going to occupy for the next 4 to 5 years, and not thinking about what's best for the country and for the economy to grow, they're going to say no because it's not beneficial to them at that given time. So I just thought I should share that quote, because I was like, that's exactly some of the thinking that I've had around, you know, these kinds of conversations. And your point around devices, thinking about how quickly everyone has had to think about living, right, with the pandemic. So I work from home every day now. Hopefully I don't have to go back to the office anytime soon. My daughter is studying from home. You know, her dad and I have to be teacher, you know, and you know, be employees at the same time. But in our instance, for example, she had an iPad, we've had to get her a laptop, so she's connected. When I think about a child in Alex who doesn't have access to, as you say, smart device, right? Their teacher doesn't have access to a smart device, and they don't have the data to be able to be educated. Do you think that now that we've, like I've said, we're now forced to think differently, do you think that our government specifically will start thinking about providing these tools a little more differently than they have? yeah, will they start thinking about it differently? Because at this point in time, we don't know when the pandemic is going to continue for, right? That's the first thing. But let's say the pandemic ends in June. What we've realized is that we don't have to do things like we did last February. You can study from home, you can work from home, you can work from Thailand and tune into a meeting on Zoom, for example. Do you think that this experience would have opened them up to moving with the times, or do you think that there would be some resistance?
If I was not hopeful, I would be like those people who migrated to Australia and UK and New Zealand. If I had lost hope, I am hopeful because change comes. Whether you want it or not, it comes. And if you don't like change, you just become irrelevant anyway. So in this case, I don't think people know that the Department of Education actually has had several pilots on tech tools. And the pedagogy of teaching is different in using tech tools versus virtual class versus face-to-face versus hybrid versus device. So there's a lot of other pilots they've been doing on the side, which I hope over time there will be lots of those trials that they've been doing that will yield a lot of learnings. It's just that maybe government has also been poor at communicating to the public some of the trials that they've been doing because you don't want to launch. The thing is with tech as well in education or health, you don't just want to do a national launch of something you didn't test or piloted, because you do need to do it at small scale first, learn the lessons that you can learn, and then by the time you scale it out nationally, you have learned enough to be able to scale nationally. So I've seen a few pilots. I'm not sure, maybe the public is not aware, but I've seen a few pilots in schools. I've seen teachers given devices. I've seen learners being given devices, but at a small scale. So I'm hopeful that because some of those pilots I'm aware of, and I'm aware that they are thinking about how to introduce more technology into schools, I'm hopeful that over time we will have an education system that is a hybrid. I don't necessarily think that people think, I'm not sure that you can completely move to virtual education with holograms. You can't just make jumps or leapfrog some things. And also you must remember that kids are not the same. Like my daughters, one likes virtual learning, one likes face-to-face. The other one likes hybrid. And because we are different personalities, some feel and are more intuitive than others. Some just like the fact that I don't have to see anyone. And I just look at the screen and that's it. So we need to also accommodate the fact that education system has to take into account different modalities of different ways of learning, which can't all be virtual. Some might be face-to-face, some might be. So I think that we just need to be able to get to a point where government also communicates better and also communicates better on these pilots that they're doing, but also we start seeing some more pilots at a provincial level. I know that even the Western Cape has pilots on tech, even actually Johannesburg, Gauteng has pilots on tech and education. And people underestimate how hard it is to teach a child virtually. I am a teacher at heart, and people underestimate how hard to teach someone virtually and how hard to now take a teacher who's been teaching for 20 years to now convert to virtual. Yeah. I don't think we give our teachers sometimes enough credit that they are trying, but they are trying with very little.
Yeah.
And it's not always their fault. So they are trying very little. So I think I'm optimistic, or else I won't be in this continent. I'm educated enough to go and work anywhere in the world. But I choose to be here because I feel like there's something coming, there's some light. We just need to all continue pushing and not lose faith and continue having hope and not stop loving the continent, because then we will stop loving being Black anyway.
Cool. So I'm going to answer give you a couple of questions from our attendees. I'm going to do a mashup of Vusmuzi and Tobega's questions. So Vusmuzi is asking how small businesses can benefit from the fourth industrial revolution. And Tobega is asking about how what entrepreneurs can do to participate in this global tech democracy. Like, what are some of the trends? What are the things that they should be looking out for in order to unlock their business potential?
Oh, amazing. That's a good question. So the first thing I always tell entrepreneurs is that you need to get online first. Because I've noticed that most entrepreneurs don't realize that businesses that are online sell 3 times more than businesses that are offline. And the second way, you just expand your market and stop thinking only you can create a local business that becomes global servant. But it started from here. ShopRite started here, and now it's an African brand. Pick n Pay, some of these brands started here, and now they moved outside. Spa is now in Europe, or Discovery started here, and they move. So there's nothing stopping entrepreneurs to have a global mindset. I just find that particularly when I speak to Black entrepreneurs, we're not yet thinking we can be global. We're always thinking, I must sell only in Kailicha or Sentin, and then that's your market. But your market is everyone. And human beings are the same anyway. They've got the same needs. They just happen to be Black, white, Indian, but these needs are similar. And you can offer solutions to global problems. So that's the first part, is the change in mindset for me that is required from entrepreneurs to stop thinking small and start thinking big enough. The second one is get online. There are many ways to get online without, if you're a startup entrepreneur, without paying a lot of money. For example, Google has a product called Google My Business or Business Profile. Now it's also called Google Business Profile. In there, you can create your business profile. You can get your business verified and listed so that it shows up on map and search. And most businesses, entrepreneurs don't realize that you need to get your business verified and listed first. And then you can also use things like analytics. You can track traffic on your business. The other thing as well I've noticed with entrepreneurs, everyone loves to build a website. They go and pay someone to build them a website. And they can now take that website domain and go to a product which is a Google-owned product called Test My Site. And I'm going to send you an email after all of this and send you, these are the things you can look at if you're an entrepreneur, and you can try them tomorrow. And then you can go and take your domain, test your site, and it will do a diagnostic tool on your site. And it will tell you whether your site is crap or not. And also, as an entrepreneur, you don't have to have a website as a beginner. You can actually go on Google My Business or Business Profile, and it has a free website, customized, easy to upload, easy to download, easy to track, and it's already linked to Google Analytics. It's linked to analytics already, and you can just start with that website first. You don't need a fancy website to start. No one is buying your website. Then the other thing I've noticed with entrepreneurs is that they need to remember, no one is buying your product or your service. Everyone is buying your solution. What we're actually paying for is a solution. We're not paying for the product. When people go to a club to show off, they are actually buying status. The solution is status so that maybe you get laid faster. That's why people go to a club and they show off their car keys. No one has ever got into a club with a petrol tank and then said, hey, I've got petrol, who wants to go out with me? No, you show your super fancy car, or you show your super fancy GG belt, the fancy brands or red bottoms. What are they buying? It's not the red bottom, it's actually buying a solution. Everyone buys solutions. And we need to stop obsessing with, look at my product. No, focus on what are you solving for? What's the solution that you're selling to us? The other thing I noticed with Black entrepreneurs as well is we are caught up in saying, I'm Black. I'm selling to blacks. It's flawed. No one buys your product because you're black. No one buys the product because you're a black woman. No one buys it because you're black woman LGBTQ. No one buys your product for that, or else we won't be shopping at ShopRite. We won't be shopping at Woolworths. We buy the solution, and it so happens that you are black. For example, when I buy Mathosa Africa Laduma, I don't buy it because it's black. I buy the product because it's great quality, great design, it's offering the great solution. It's an interpretation of my traditions, customs, and values in design. And it's premium. And then cherry on top, he's so happy to be black. But that's cherry on top. And let's stop selling our skin color as if like it's a currency that people should buy. And then the last thing I would say is that what I will do, I offer to do is I will send an email to BMF, and the email will have, here are some of the top 10 things for entrepreneurs, for parents, for educators, tools that are available, open platforms, free, that you can use tomorrow. And then hopefully for those who are genuinely committed, you will go in there and start using those tools. And then you will see how useful some of these tools are and how they will help democratize your business.
Awesome, thank you for that. I hope that answers your questions, Busmuzi and Tobega. I will then move on to Dumi. I'm sorry, I don't want to butcher your surname, so yeah. Dumi went to UCT with you and is really impressed by your trajectory and your success. I'm just gonna read Dumi's comments verbatim. There is no doubt that tech is a force for good, so we don't debate that. However, there are very good reasons why tech has come under the radar of advanced economy governments such as the US and EU to introduce greater regulation. It is becoming clearer that big tech has failed to self-regulate, and so the next few years will probably see a greater amount of regulation introduced by governments. Do you agree with that statement? Do you think it's a fair assessment of how big tech behaves? And what do you think that greater regulation in the industry, like, do you think it will hamper growth or will it be beneficial?
I think I don't remember ever hearing the tech industry saying they are anti-regulation, because I work in it. So I track all the things around privacy, security, safety. So let me start there. Unless you can give me like evidence, like quotes, that this CEO of Facebook or Google or Amazon or you name it, Tesla, they said anti-regulation. So I don't remember that, because as I've already told you, tech industry is young. And so now we are learning that it also has some shadows that we need to now manage. But it also has good that we need to promote. Now, for me, is how, if I was in government, is finding the balance. How do you find and promote what is good? And how do you manage that which you perceive to be a shadow or to be bad? It's no different from alcohol. Now we are in COVID times, and we know that hospitals are full when people are drunk, and we know it becomes a burden to the health system. Now it's government's job then to say, we are not going to tell you not to drink, but at this point in time, here are some of the measures we're going to put in place to promote more, to give the health system some breathing space. Same, I've told you with the car industry. There was a time there were no seatbelts. There was a time that the tires were not checked regularly. Now we do that. We have license disc. We've got things. So all industries evolve, and they then have to find the balance between good and managing what is bad that comes out of that industry. So I am more pro for making sure that that which is good, we don't throw the baby with the bathwater. Just because there's bad in something, it doesn't mean that there isn't good in something. So it's just we need to have enough wisdom and prudence to be able to say, how do we protect and grow that which is good in this sector, whether it's a car industry, whether it's banking. I mean, there was a time where banking profiled Black people and we paid higher interest rates and we had loan sharks. And then we intervened. There were some regulations put in place to manage that. So every industry, as I've already said, has good in it, has problems in it. And our job is to have enough prudence and wisdom and foresight to figure out how not to throw the baby with the bathwater. And how do we keep the baby growing while changing the water and making sure it's clean and keeping it clean. So I'm more for the finding the balance and finding that prudence and not act harshly and rush and hastily and then produce unintended negative consequences in the long run. So I'm for this approach of finding prudence and wisdom in finding the balance of managing that which is bad and promoting that which is good about any industry.
Awesome. And then from Puseleto, they love your work. They have a question around inclusivity. How do we as individuals circumvent the inadequacies of government in giving STEM support, ensuring internet access in non-urban areas? As an example, the 4IR Commission, for example, was established in 2019, and we are yet to see how they and governments have lent support to digitization and access.
I'm an existentialist. So as an existentialist, I sometimes go to the unit of analysis called the individual. As citizens, we need to stop looking up and think that our savior is coming. We also need to say, as an individual, what am I doing to bring about 4IR? Or as an individual, for example, some people on this call or video conference have kids. How many of them have over-invested on Barbie dolls versus giving your child a computer? How many of you have introduced your child in coding early? That's nothing to do with Cyril Ramaphosa. That's nothing to do with the school your child goes to. How many of you have nieces and nephews and relatives where you pulled one or two up with you and you've introduced them to computer science and you've made them love maths and you've given them extra tutorial classes in maths and you've made them fall in love with maths and fall in love with STEM? That's at a unit of analysis, the individual. I'm struggling when I'm going to look up all the time, because if I do that, then we will have no progress. So I feel like it will be a convergence of up and down. And down is us, the citizens on the ground, making sure that our kids, there's a fair balance that, like, for example, we know now from all the studies done that women self-promote less than men. Women under self-evaluate more than men do. And we also know that women do better in maths and STEM at primary and high school, but there's a high dropout at university. We know that even in computer science, women are smarter than men. Sorry to the men, that's the truth. That's based on facts. And we know that even in maths, women do better than men. Now the question then becomes, when parents start saying to their daughter, no, you must just become a social worker. No, you must just, why are parents who are even in middle class, Black, are not promoting software engineering? Why are parents not looking at the jobs of the future and see that the jobs of the future will require these skills? So how do I nudge my child towards those skills? Why everyone thinks, no, you must become a doctor, you must become a social worker, a teacher. We're still trapped, even us, even people in my age, we're still trapped in what we call safe jobs and safe job professions. So when your child comes to you and says, I want to do this, we're like, is that going to give you a job? We're not even thinking, are you going to start your own business? So there's something fundamentally wrong even with us as adults that I always try these days to stop focusing and spending too much time on what government should do. It's the same thing I tell people. I spend very little time thinking about what should white people do. I think as Black people, we've spent too much time either educating white people about us, telling them what they should do, and we spend very little time thinking, how did we get into this mess in the first place? How did we get colonized? How did we get apartheid? What was our contribution to our own enslavement? And how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? At this rate, where we're going, we're just gonna get enslaved again because we are continuously looking at what others should do. And we spend very little time thinking about what we should do. And we should stop this because we're wasting too much time. Because privilege is just gonna listen to us and do nothing anyway. And now it's about time that we start looking at the unit of analysis first. And everyone who's on this call must be asking themselves as an individual, what am I doing? How many more other Black people am I pulling up with me? How are my kids being ready for the world of the future, which is now actually not even future. Yeah. And we are failing ourselves. We're failing as parents to do this. We're failing as uncles and aunts to do it for our nieces and nephews. I think we just need to start there. Family is the fundamental unit of analysis to bring about community change, then to bring about provincial change, then to bring about country change. I think we need to just focus on your family and stop looking up. Just look at those 50 extended relatives you have and how many you can make a change there. And then you will see change will come. But it's not gonna come if we're busy thinking it will come. There's never been a revolution anywhere. It's an evolution. Things evolve to better. Revolutions, I haven't seen them succeed much. There's a revolution, a new leader takes over, normally it's a dictator anyway. And then we go back, look at Zimbabwe. There's never been revolutions that seem to produce great advances. So I rather prefer we think about evolutions and we evolve our kids into better spaces, think differently, we evolve them. Same with men. If someone is asking me, same, men needs to evolve, but men are not gonna be a revolution. Masculinity takes time to evolve anyway. And so they will evolve, but we need to keep making sure they evolve. And we need to make sure that they understand that gender equality matters, or else we won't have prosperity in the nation. So I think for me, unit of analysis, the individual. The second unit of analysis, your family. The third unit of analysis, where you grew up. And you just focus on those three, and that's what I'm focusing on. I run an NGO that just focuses on the places I come from. And I just go to the schools I grew up in. And then I focus on my relatives. I pick 3 or 4 kids with the money that I now have, because I'm in the 1 to 3% of South Africans when it comes to income. So I might as well give back some of it. And I don't tithe with church because I'm not religious. So I don't believe in pastors and religion, but I do believe in tithing. So I take that 10, 20% of my tithing and I find people I can lift up with me while I also lift myself. And I think we should start there.
Awesome. And I think that also answers Dumi's question, who was asking what we can do as civilians and corporates to become a positive force and assist this movement. I think you've more than answered the question. And a lot of the points, as Mpho is mentioning on the comments, is that it's so aligned to exactly why the BMF exists, is that it's about looking at Black professionals and advancing them for the betterment of this country. I thought that was really like.
Sorry, like the person who talks about corporate, for example. Sometimes the flaw I see in us, Black people, when we get to corporations, we still want to be political activists. We don't want to be corporate activists. We want to be political activists or social activists. And we also want to argue with heart and feelings. That's that place doesn't do well with corporations, don't do well with like hearts and feelings. And if we want to make arguments, can we start learning storytelling that is grounded on facts, that is grounded on, if you do this, this is the ROI you're gonna get, but this is also what the society will get. But let's stop saying, you're not doing enough for Black people. You're not, I mean, that's just guilt tripping. And corporations don't have guilt most of the time. So you're just wasting your time. So why don't you just argue more on showing the business how it increases shareholder value, how it increases market share, how it increases brand and reputation, if it were to go to Alex and do 1, 2, 3, or if it were to go to Kyalicha and do 1, 2, 3, then in that way, it's a win-win. You get what you want, that your society that you come from gets better at a profit. But I sometimes feel like when I hear people come to me and say, I'm hurtful, I'm angry with my company, they're not doing enough, then I ask them, what proposals did you put in place to bring about this change that you want? And all I hear is more activism without substance. And I think us as Black people also need to stop this nonsense or start our own businesses then. But the ones that we work in, which are owned, mostly white owned, they're not gonna just listen to you because you're Black and you are passionate about Black people. It's just not gonna happen. They're there to increase shareholder value. And just wake up and make peace with the fact that the essence of a company's existence, either than doing good, is shareholder value creation. Or else, why it exists then? It must just become an NPO. And then they won't talk about shareholder value creation, they'll talk about surplus. They won't talk about profit and revenue. So I just feel like what I've observed, the mistake sometimes we make is that we are more emotional than we are factual. First, let's be factual and then wrap it with emotion. But I'm not saying don't be emotional, don't be passionate, but just facts. Go do the homework and then argue with facts and then wrap it with comradeship or political activism. But can you start with facts first?
Awesome. And then one question that's directed at you specifically that I got via WhatsApp. So with Google being such a huge tech giant with thousands of staff worldwide and with a lot of decision-making power lying with the original founders and employees who are based mostly in the USA, what latitude do you have as CMO of Google Africa to introduce technological changes that are relevant to the region that you head up?
Oh, amazingly. The only reason I joined Google was because exactly what the person is saying, I asked. Freedom to be able to influence the system. How is it available? Is it needed? And why am I being brought in? The feedback I got was, we have this mission. It's called, the Google mission is to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible, useful, and helpful. And the company then says to me, we are lagging behind in Africa. Our mission is incomplete without Africa. We cannot democratize all this knowledge and information and not be helpful and useful. Now, my job is then to say to Google, what are Africa needs? What are African user needs? And segment it into low income, those who are offline, to those who are online, those with devices that are low on memory, to those with smart devices, those who have data struggles, those who don't have data struggles, those who don't have data at all. Then we start, my job is to basically be a user insights champion, to be able to go to engineers and say, language matters. If you don't improve language and you don't improve vernacular, or you don't improve video, or you don't improve voice, you don't improve this becoming, helping people make money now, we are never going to be relevant. But Google needs an Africans to be the ones who go to Mountain View and San Francisco to speak on behalf of Africans and say, we understand what the African user needs are. And then we can then influence the engineering production community within Google to then start building those features that will be relevant. For example, let me give you a simple thing. On Maps, when I joined, Maps was only for motor cars. And then we go to Google and say, but if you look in the continent and you look at India, motorbikes are more dominant than four-wheel cars. So why don't we design a feature that help people who are on a tuk-tuk, who are on a motorbike, who are pedestrians, to be able to also use Maps? And then we launched that feature 2 years ago. But you see, that's something, then if we go back to Google as well and talk about isiZulu or Swat or Sotho or Spedi or Afrikaans is not well represented within Google, or even voice. Now, my job is to go and influence the linguistics community within Google to say, over time, I want that lady who tells you in voice assistant or Maps to sound like South African. But that's going to require linguists. So a lot of people don't realize that technology still needs social science. We need linguists who are going to teach the computer how to pronounce things the South African way. So I have to work hard in trying to find that and then go. So then I must say, for me, I haven't found like being at Google. I would have left by now, first year or 6 months, because I have fuck of money. So I don't have the same problem some black people have. So I do have fuck of money, so I don't need to stay at a place just because. So I stay because I believe that I still have the freedom to be able to give advice, to give input, to be able to shape the agenda, so that when we start producing YouTube, for example, most people don't realize that the YouTube now you can now make choices on resolution. You can go lower resolution, medium resolution, high resolution. Some of those ideas came from low-income countries to accommodate for data struggles. So you will see that more and more you will start seeing features that accommodate for Africans or emerging markets. And we learn from India, we learn from Vietnam, we learn from the continent as a whole, or we learn some parts of Brazil as well. So you will start seeing those, but I still believe that there is, or else I promise you I won't be there, because I'm not I'm not desperate for a job.
I love that note about fuck off money. Most of us are still working towards that. Hopefully we'll reach it soon. Thank you so much for your time today. I personally learned a lot. I appreciated the insights that you shared with us. It's a pity that we don't have a lot of time, because I've got a lot of questions. And, thank you to our attendees as well for sharing some of the questions. I just wanted to leave a note for you to just say the foundations of 4IR that you shared with us. For me, I think transcend the topic that we're talking about. I think that they are relevant to any kind of like progress that we want to see in our country specifically. And my hope is that for everyone who was listening here tonight, they jotted those down, because I do believe that the way forward is to have that foundation, as you put it. And I'm looking forward to receiving the list that you promised us, that we'll be sharing with everyone. That's very generous of you, because I do believe that, as humans, we get stuck into specific habits. When I first read the question, I was like, oh no, but that's so obvious what businesses should be doing. But I think it's important for people to ask the questions, because one, there's no silly question, but to ask the question, because sometimes we may overthink things. And I think you've clarified a lot of points for the people that have answered the questions. So from my end, thank you. From the BMF, thank you. I'm going to hand over to, I don't know if you want to say any last words.
Can I make a practical commitment to the BMF, something that you can hold me accountable for? 3 things that I would like to partner with the BMF on. Google has 3 things, those are the three I'm going to share with the BMF. There's many, but these three. The first one, there's a program that the Google runs. It's called I'm Remarkable. And this program is called #I'm Remarkable. This program is there to teach the underrepresented groups how to self-promote. Because there's enough evidence that especially Black women and Blacks, if you're a minority, we don't know how to self-promote. We think it's arrogance. So we think it's humility when we undersell ourselves. So I'm committing that if BMF reaches out to me, and then I'll find someone to help, see if we can train a few people within BMF who can then become the trainers for I'm Remarkable to teach everyone how to self-promote. The second one is digital skills. Anyone here who wants to improve your digital skills, that's available now. You can Google Digital Skills Africa, Google. And I'll also try and offer someone who can provide for BMF, which BMF can then run, a digital skills session. The third one is entrepreneurship. Anyone who has a small business or a small hustle, because you must always have side hustle. Anyone who has just one job, you are in deep shit, because you must have multiple hustles. You can't depend on one income. That's just not life. You must have multiple sources of income or hustles. I will provide someone who can offer a session on what are the digital tools and skills that are available for entrepreneurs that they can use tomorrow. So if you chase me with those three things, those will be my practical commitments on things we can start doing by probably end of February. So that's my commitment, something just more practical. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. I will personally hold you to that. So I'll be sending an email this evening with regards to those. But I'm going to hand over to Nkosinathi from our provincial exco to say the closing word.
Mr. Masito, thank you very much for gracing us with your presence. I must say it was a very quick and swift process, getting hold of you, getting you to join. You didn't take us back and forth, so we really appreciate that. And I think the reason why I also wanted to see you on the platform was to essentially teach our members about the F-off money specifically, because that gives you options. And we don't perceive ourselves as having options. When we are in the corporate environments, we become slaves of the system. And I think your career trajectory has shown us as Black people as a whole that, if you have options, then people really do take you seriously because you don't need to move with the wind. And you can have a strong opinion and still ascend, because usually we are told that you need to shut up, sit in the corner, and then your career will grow. But essentially you are a testament of the fact that if you are strong-willed and believe in yourself and believe in your capability, you're able to reach where you didn't even dream to go. So we really, really appreciate that. And we'll definitely take you up on your offer. We really do want to empower members on digital skills, especially with e-commerce being so predominant. I know most of us Black folks always think business is a brick and mortar business, not understanding that that's capital expenditure that's unnecessary, especially during these times where people are sitting at home and there's options and opportunities. And COVID has kind of limited the playing fields, because now people are looking online for solutions. And I think our members would be really, really, it would be really beneficial, essentially, for our members to learn more about digital skills and how Google offers various solutions like websites that you can do yourself without paying someone 30 or 40K. The GDN, GSN to market your business, which costs a fraction of what a radio ad would cost you, with broader reach, targeted reach, targeting and the likes. So we really, really look forward to that. And thank you very much for gracing us with your presence. I think we'll take the discussion further offline. We'll take you up on your offer, definitely. I think you can see our chair there smiling, because as you were talking, she was actually WhatsApping me and telling me that, hey, we need to get Zamo into a meeting so we can see how we can help our members. So we really are really grateful and we thank you. And yeah, no, thank you very much. for gracing us with your presence. So we're looking forward to engaging and developing a relationship with you personally and with Google Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Use me while I'm still breathing, and then I hope we can find a way to bring the Africa that Steve Biko wanted, or Pixley Sami wanted, or Thomas Sankara wanted. So I hope we can do it, and I think it's possible. I think you have enough time, BMF members, who can.
No, I agree. No, I agree. No, thank you.
Thank you
It's
very
possible,
much.
and I want to say preach.
Thank you very much. So
All right.
we'll make things happen, and then we can just be more, not just talking, but also doing.
No, definitely. No, we're looking forward to the interaction. As Mandisa said, she'll swiftly send you that mail, and we'll take that discussion further.
And please public shame me if I'm not living up to my promise.
No, I'll speak to the contact that helped me get you. I know he'll get your attention.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a good
Thanks.
Thank
You
you.
did
Have
a
a good
great job,
evening.
facilitator Mandisa, you did an amazing job. Thank you for doing all that intensive research and really showing solid understanding of the industry and the issues, and you did an amazing job. Like, thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much. I appreciate that.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, guys. Thank you for joining us, members. Hope you still are in good standing. Pay your fee. You see the great things we bring. Stay safe and God bless.
Bye.